Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our next workshop, Partnerships for Placemaking Maplewood MetroBus Transformation Project. I want to thank all of you who are continuing to join us this afternoon. I hope you had a chance to get up and stretch your legs from the last workshop. And this afternoon, we're going to jump right into Partnerships for Placemaking. Citizens for Modern Transit, the regional transit advocacy organization in St. Louis, and AARP in St. Louis recently unveiled a new MetroBus Stop in partnership with the City of Maplewood, Citizens National Bank, and KABOOM, a national nonprofit that partners with communities to expand play opportunities with kids in a small municipality in St. Louis called the City of Maplewood. The project, known as the Transit Stop Transformation Project, is now complete and open to the public. So how did this partnership come about? How do we move a vision into action with community stakeholders? How can you change a MetroBus stop in your community or city or town? First, I'd like to welcome our panelists. Sheila Holm is the Community Outreach Director for AARP in St. Louis. Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you.
Laura Miller is the Community Development Director for the City of Maplewood. Thank you both for joining us today to help tell this story. We wanted to kick off this presentation by providing a glimpse into the transformation and then an opportunity to hear from some of the stakeholders involved to move advocacy into action. If you have any questions during this workshop, please post them in the chat box, and I promise that we will get to them. And if you are speaking, if you're not speaking, we ask you to mute yourself to eliminate any background noise. Thank you. And now let's really take a look at this vision of how this MetroBus came to be, and then we'll open up our panel discussion. Thank you. So as we get started, we can say that we've had our first technological glitch for this conference. We have the wrong video that played, but that was a quick glimpse of what the transformation looked like. We missed out on the stakeholder interview. So if you want to see the full video, I recommend going to the website cmt-stl.org to actually hear from the other community stakeholders who aren't on this call today about this project. But to get started, Sheila and Laura, can you talk a little bit about how your organizations came to be involved in this type of project, changing a MetroBus stop from what we saw at the beginning of the video into this transformed space that you now see behind Laura's head, actually in her profile picture right now?
Well, I'll go ahead and kick it off. So with AARP, we've been partnering with CMT for several years doing temporary placemaking around transit. And we really wanted to create a permanent structure. And so we partnered with CMT to find a location that would be best suited, and go on from there. We won't talk about the mechanics of it, but the main reason why AARP wanted to be involved is to make sure that we have public transit sites available for older adults as they age and stop driving or don't want to drive, and that are safe and secure and create a sense of community as well, an opportunity to socialize. Laura?
So I met Sheila to talk about, we had met and discussed some other initiatives in our community, and we were working toward those when Sheila contacted me about this project. And so again, my work started with AARP, and it was Sheila that introduced me to Kim, and that's where we got our start. It's very, very simple.
Held you, hostage to participate in this project. I can honestly say that from the very beginning of this project, there was complete cooperation across the board. And I think that this sense of team and sense of group responsibility really led to the success of the project. But when you both look at it from your organizational perspectives, what do you think were the key elements to success? And I think that that's really important in this conversation, because we have so many other communities and transit providers and organizations that are represented in our audience today. How would something like this be able to happen in their areas? So what key elements should they be looking for to make a successful project?
I'll start. I think the key is communication. For us, we had quite a few stakeholders involved, so communication was a big part of that. I also think, getting your community stakeholders involved from the beginning, getting them engaged in this project, which was a key for our community to make this successful. We started with gathering the residents and talking to them to see what they wanted to see happen in this new space, as well as the business owners and the transit riders. So communication and getting your stakeholders involved is of the utmost, I think, importance.
I would agree, Laura. The community engagement was top for me as well. I think engaging the community was critical to our success. I think another piece is a shared vision. I mean, what do we want to get out of this? What's the end result? Why do we want that? And so I think that was really helpful to us, because we had that shared vision, and the communication the collaboration between really the three key partners in this, which are all of us represented on this screen right now. So CMT, the City of Maplewood, and AARP. So really making sure that people are communicating and are all on the same page.
So if you were to do this project again, and Sheila and I are actually going to be doing this project again, we're actually moving into a new project in East St. Louis at one of the Metrolink stations in East St. Louis, Illinois. If you were going to do this project again, what would you recommend to someone else considering working with community stakeholders to transform a bus stop? What would you change if you were going to do this project again? Are there any elements that you would build off of, change, or do over?
Keep it local. So, and what I mean by that is we had a national partner, which is an amazing organization. However, it really created some challenges for us. One, they didn't know the community. Two, they were managing the project manager. And so there was a divide. And so I would keep it all local, someone who understands your community, your needs, and that can gather with you on a, like 15 minutes from now, let's get together kind of thing, where we could not do that. And then I think managing all the aspects through one house. And I mean, where you do have one entity that's managing it, you may have a lot of partners, but one entity that's really the lead in it, I think would help.
Laura, is there anything that you from a municipality perspective would change? I think it would be good if we could touch on a little bit about, when you're talking about that, some of the steps that we had to go through at the municipality level, the zoning and the project, making it through the approval process.
Sure. I think Sheila is spot on with keeping it local. I think that would is very important. Working with people that really know your community, that are here, understand the processes that we have to go through. So for the City of Maplewood, I will say we pride ourselves in trying to get businesses and residents through the municipal process as quickly and painlessly as possible. And so for this project, we had our public works director involved from the beginning with conversations as to, just here's what we're thinking, here's our plan A, and he was able to give us some other thoughts and ideas that, well, this might be a little bit more difficult, this might take a little bit more time, maybe think along the lines of doing it this way. Giving us an idea, because we are a municipality within St. Louis County, not only do we have our own permitting process, but there's also the process through St. Louis County. So any kind of mechanical, plumbing, or electrical permits have to go through St. Louis County, which takes a little bit longer than other permits that we do directly here in Maplewood. And so just understanding that timeline is extremely important. And then having that champion within your municipality that is kind of your point person that you can go to for questions and anything that may come up that's pulling for you, but also understands the amount of time that's needed to get through those permitting processes, which is probably the biggest challenge, is the permits. So then once the concept came to life, it had to go through our design and review board as well. So not only did we have the permits that we had to pull, but it had to be approved by our design and review board. And so again, nothing happens overnight, that's for sure.
Patience is a real virtue in a project like this. That is for sure. So what have been some of the residual benefits of this project? This is a bus stop at the corner of Manchester and Marshall in the City of Maplewood. But what would be residual benefits that you think other communities might see by actually transforming a bus stop into more of a connection and part of the fabric of the community and their neighborhoods?
I think for our community, it really highlights transit and sort of people that may not have been using transit for whatever reason, or maybe has been considering to start using mass transit more, really making that more of their daily routine. I think it really definitely highlights transit in a positive way. And, it draws a lot of attention. This bus stop draws a lot of attention. And it's a beautiful space in our community now. It's a place that you want to be. And so, for us, transit, for any community, transit is crucial. And, while we might be a very small community, we have 3 major thoroughfares that run through our community. And Manchester Road, where the bus stop is heavily traveled. And we have quite a few stops through our community. So, again, I just think it's just really brings transit to the forefront and the importance of transit, mass transit in our community.
Sheila?
I think for AARP, a couple things. One, this was just one of 5 permanent structure projects that AARP took part in across the nation, again, related to transportation, transit. So it's a big feather. So we'll put that out there for AARP in this region. The other thing, though, has been really kind of a ripple effect, is that as people drive by, Laura indicated, it's pretty significant. There's a pretty big footprint there. But the community sees that and they associate you with that and they talk to you about that. In our case, AARP members see it, same kind of thing. Hey, you're doing something in our community. And then also our volunteers, some of our volunteers who had a role in different aspects of this project. So I think just being associated with something like this and the impact that it has on the community. And then also I think, it's kind of, they think we're all strange bedfellows. So, why is AARP doing this? Well, we care and, about how our people can get around. And so I think that's been a unique thing too, is seeing AARP in a different light.
I think another, just from our perspective, another residual benefit that we saw, just to be clear, where this bus stop is sitting, where we're looking at was actually a privately owned parklet in the city of Maplewood that is owned by a bank that sits across the street. And when we first approached the bank, we could honestly say that they weren't, ready to throw a party over the request that we redo the bus stop on their parklet land. And when we wrapped this project, we actually had the bank president ask us if we would consider doing the same type of project directly across the street on another bus stop that sits on the other corner that the bank owns in the city of Maplewood. So I think we were actually able to turn some individuals who may not have seen the benefit of how much of a bus stop could become more a part of the community than what the current one that was sitting there was. And we turned maybe some naysayers into true advocates about permanent placemaking and the impact that transit can have in a community versus them. I believe the initial conversation was, well, we didn't want that right outside our window. So, by going into a community and one of the residual benefits for sure was having that community dialogue with the stakeholders in the community, the residents and the transit riders, but some of the key businesses as well. There is also a local coffee shop that is, independently owned coffee shop that sits directly across the street from this parklet. And that business owner could not be more than, he was overjoyed at the transformation at the corner across the street from him. And he was willing to supply us with unlimited caffeine to make sure that this project came to fruition. But again, the residual benefits were, in a workshop a little bit ago, we talked about buy-in and actually showing the transformation. I think that you get some significant buy-in from people in a community, whether they ride the transit system or not, the importance of transit to that community. And I think that was a real residual benefit that we also saw around this project in Maplewood. And I think that can be transferred to other communities across Missouri for sure. What do you think, Laura, what are you hearing from your residents? What has been the response from your residents and community stakeholders outside of the bank and the coffee shop owner that you're seeing around this project? And maybe talk a little bit about what you're also considering for other areas around the buses in Maplewood.
So the parklet where the bus stop sits is actually the backdrop for many of our community events that we have throughout the year. And so, I think from the resident standpoint, it's really opened up the space with, you probably saw it in the video, but there was a planter box that really divided the sidewalk from the park itself. And so with that being removed, the space has really opened up and become much more inviting. It's one of those places where people are meeting. It's become much more inviting to grab a cup of coffee and sit in the park area. And so, and it makes a beautiful backdrop to our events. With transit riders, I walk that area quite often, and the consistent thing that I'm hearing is that it feels safe and comfortable. there was no lighting there. There was one light pole, street light pole that it doesn't put off a lot of light for the area. And now with the, you can see in the photo in my background, that the sign is lit, but it actually does put off quite a bit of light in that space. So the transit riders feel very comfortable in the space. And, you know, this has really got us thinking. We have quite a few of these bus shelters down Manchester. And so to be able to tie them all in together, I think would, for us, would be fantastic. So we're looking at taking what's been done at this bus stop and maybe taking a few of those elements and carrying those over into the other bus stops along Manchester Road.
Thank you. And Sheila, do you want to talk a little bit about what the response has been from AARP with this project? You know, is there an opportunity for more of this in other communities?
Yeah. So first, wow. I mean, that's what people say when they see it, you know, when they see the full transformation, like, wow. Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of opportunities for other communities to replicate this. Every community represented on this this conference can do this. So whether AARP is at the table or not, this can be easily replicated, utilizing, you know, community resources. Again, you know, think about who you wouldn't think would be at the table, because that would be like AARP. You wouldn't think we'd be at the table. So I think you got to continue to think outside the box on that. And I think that was a lesson learned going back to a previous question, but don't assume, that these are the only people that fit into this. But, I think that one of the things I will share, and made me think about it when Laura was talking about expanding this through the community, is I'll do a little plug. AARP has community challenge grants that communities can apply for every year. And this year in Missouri, I think they gave out $200,000 for projects like this. May not fund your whole project, but may fund part of it. And so I think there are things out there and resources out there that also can help a community. And AARP has lots of resources, whether it's a human like me helping with this project or otherwise. But yeah, absolutely. It's been a great ripple for us.
So I think another thing that we need to talk about, there are a lot of transit representatives from transit providers in our audience today. And I don't want them to think that the onus of this project falls on the transit agency. Actually, this project that we did in Maplewood, the land was owned by a private business. The bus shelters were actually old bus shelters owned by the municipality that we recycled. To give you the look that you saw in the video, the transformation was actually a recycling of the original bus shelter. The transit agency, actually, Metro Transit, we didn't really ask them for very much at all, and we're working on getting the other videos so that you can hear from Metro Transit CEO Talby Roach on the project. We didn't ask for very much. We asked for them to provide continued service on the 31 Metro bus to the stop, but they did not. We didn't ask them for resources or anything. So I don't want this conversation to be like the onus of transforming a bus stop has to be on the actual transit provider, because it does not. This is a way for community stakeholders or organizations to actually get involved and help build ridership on the transit system by looking at your bus stops and making them more welcoming, not only for the riders, but also for your residents. I think the last conversation I had with Laura was that she now has residents who hang out in the bus shelters because they're not just benches. One of them has a glider. The seating is great. They get a great view of the community going by. And so there's a real opportunity to have interaction with transit riders and residents because it's such a great space. Everyone wants to hang out in it. So yeah, I don't want people to think that this is, we're putting the onus on a project like this on the transit providers. Not at all. I think that this is a way for transit providers to actually work with community organizations and others to do some really great stuff in your communities. So what steps would you ladies recommend if people are interested in doing a similar project in their neighborhood from each of your perspectives?
From mine, I think first is, is there a need? What would the need be? Who are we trying to serve and in what capacity? Who are your potential partners and what roles are they going to play? And I think that role definition, we worked our way through it, but we didn't start out that way. so I think that it would be an important thing. And then how are you going to do it? What's the methodology you're going to use? And then how are you going to keep everybody informed? I will have to say that with this particular project, all of us were communicating what was happening, but it was critical because of who Laura was communicating with were the residents and through the schools, because they had a role in this as well, and CMT with their constituency, and then AARP with ours. So I think, it needs to be a wraparound, keeping everybody informed of what's going on, and be open to change.
Yes.
So Laura, what steps would you recommend if people are interested in doing a similar project in their neighborhood? And I would challenge the audience while we're having this conversation, if you think of groups in your areas that might be good partners to do something like this, feel free to place them in the chat, because that might generate ideas for other people in the audience who might be interested in a similar project as well. So Laura, what steps would you recommend if people are interested in doing a similar project?
Well, like Sheila said, I think, is there a need? Is there a need in the community? And then I think the conversation might need to I think sometimes it's easier to sort of start small, kind of like Sheila did with myself. We were talking about other initiatives. This wasn't even on the plate when we had our first meeting. And then, we stayed in communication, but then all of a sudden I get this idea out of the blue, was not expecting it. And I thought, well, why wouldn't we participate in this? I mean, that was my first thought. And so I think, just kind of make sure there's a need and that there is support. So start out small, start the conversation small with a small group of stakeholders, and then grow from there. And it is important to think about who you wouldn't necessarily consider. Think outside the box. Who would be that unexpected supporter of this? One thing that I would like to mention is when we talk about stakeholders, don't forget about the young ones in your community. When we did this engagement, we targeted residents from 8 to 80 and to come up with what we have. Now we, again, had to be a little bit flexible. Budget does play a part in this. And so, what we had originally, the original concept to what we have now is there's change there, but I mean, we couldn't have ended up with anything more amazing. It is just incredible. But don't forget about those younger stakeholders in your community and getting them involved.
So I think that's a really interesting comment, because to expand a little bit on what the community engagement process actually looked like for this project. So this project included community meetings, it included a community survey, it included face-to-face interviews with the local businesses along the central business district where this project is located. It also included a Saturday morning kind of charrette-like event where we wanted people to design what they'd like to see. And kids were a very large part of it. We also had one of our group go into the school district and meet with some of the classrooms there and talk to the kids about what they would like to see in their community. And one of the themes, and that's why I think this is so applicable to other communities, one of the themes that we heard over and over again is whatever you do has to be like the front porch of this City of Maplewood. And what would you have on your front porch? What would it be? Would it be a swing, or would it be color, or would it, and you know, on a front porch, you'd probably get color through flowers or other things, but how would it be interactive? And if you can see behind Laura's head, and we're going to play the video in a second where you can actually hear the stakeholders talk about this project as well. We wanted this to be interactive, and you're going to see some of that in this project. You know, there was a local artist that designed the sign, the Maplewood sign, that also shows parts of Highway 66 on the back of it, and there's the interactive hopscotch for not only children. Since this project is open, we've seen grandparents and adults and anyone really participating in interactive hopscotch. But part of this is the community engagement. So you might not even be talking about redoing a bus stop in your community, but if you are talking about community redevelopment, or if a local church is talking about an area around their building, or some other organization is talking about community redesign in a certain neighborhood or a certain area, this is an opportunity to include transit in a part of those conversations, and a part of those. The initial steps don't have to have anything to do with transit, but what you can do is carry over the wants that you hear in your community engagement into the transit stop. I think what we'd like to do at this point is actually play the right video and resolve our technological glitch from the first time, and hear from the stakeholders, so that the audience on this workshop can hear from the actual stakeholders. And then we'll wrap it up with what lessons that learned from each of our panelists right now. So if we can cue that video, I think we'll go to that next. Over the last several years, CMT and AARP have been doing pop-up metro markets at stations across the St. Louis area for people to visualize what could be around a transit stop or a transit station.
We were talking about wanting to have a permanent installation, something that we can hang our hat on, say that this is something that we were able to bring to a community that really impacted the community from a transit standpoint.
Originally, this bus stop was just an older bus shelter, not very much around it.
It had a big old tie wall planter and evergreens that had kind of overgrown, and then we were approached by citizens for modern transit in the city of Maplewood and others to change the look.
What we've been able to do with the design of this bus stop is add an interactive play element with the hopscotch that you see.
It's just a lot better look. It spiffed up the corner quite a bit.
This project started out with engaging the community from the beginning, and so they really had a stake in what this looks like today.
So we met at a local restaurant, a coffee house, and we asked the community, what would you like to see in this space?
They were talking about what community meant to them. The concept really came from the idea of the front porch. This is really the place where you welcome and communicate and embrace kind of your neighbors. It's your front door to the outside world.
And this is the result. They wanted it bright and active, where it integrated with the park.
It really showcases who we are as a community, that we bring together people and we enjoy hanging out as a community. So we really were grateful to have something like this help showcase who we are.
It doesn't necessarily look like a transit stop. It looks like a place to just sit down and talk to your neighbors, it's a meeting place for friends.
And we're so excited to use this as a pilot for other stations in the St. Louis community.
So that's our hope, is that this will be a template that we can use with other communities or organizations.
This template provides something where maybe there's some new activity or some new excitement even around existing bus stops and entry points. So finding new ways to access our system, new customers, and new parts of the community. We need to become innovative and exciting. This is part of that.
So I hope that brought the project a little more to life for our audience today, being able to hear from some of the stakeholders who were involved in the project. And again, if there are any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat box while we wrap up. But are there any one lesson learned you'd like to share with anyone that is joining our workshop today? Sheila?
Well, so I have two, and I've mentioned them already, but go local, and I can't say that enough, go local. And secondly, don't underestimate who could be an amazing partner with you for the community in whatever transformation you do, whether it's transit related or maybe ultimately becomes transit related. But you know, step outside, color outside the lines. So just try something completely ridiculous. I mean, when we started this, we thought it was kind of like, how can we make this? And it just kept getting a little bigger and bigger, and you know, so why not? I guess.
Okay. Laura?
I echo Sheila on staying local. You know, I think it's always good to look and see what other communities are doing around transit, but having people that really know your community, understand your community, and it just makes the whole process a little bit smoother when everybody's here, and when you're trying to manage a large project like this. And so, so I think that's key. You know, who knew that a transit stop could be so much fun? And so just listen. That's a big part of my job, is just listen, and nothing is out of reach. It's you know, getting all those different perspectives and then pulling it together. So again, stay local, and don't say no right off the bat. You know, listen.
Those are great lessons learned. I would also add patience. You know, we are one to have a project done within a 2-month time frame, and these are big projects, even though they might not look like a big project. Projects like this, transforming a bus stop, takes a lot of time, especially to get through planning and zoning and design. And really, the other lesson is put as much attention you can up front to community engagement. Hear from as many stakeholders as you can up front to make sure that your project encompasses as much of what the area, the neighborhood, the transit riders want to see and hear. You know, I think when we do this project again in a different area, I think we'll even add even more engagement with the transit riders, not just the ones during the day, but the ones that are there early in the morning and the ones that are there still using the system late at night. As much community engagement as possible. Now, we did have the opportunity to engage transit riders at the end of this project, and they were thrilled. They were literally jumping for joy, which was so exciting for us that we had done something that had impacted so much what transit riders needed in the area, and that they felt like this was the top of the top with regards to bus stops in the St. Louis market. So I think patience and intensive community engagement are 2 lessons learned on this project that we will be taking with us as we do these projects in other areas. I want to thank you both today for your help. There aren't any questions in the chat box today. I think that there are people still out there in the audience, and I hope, if nothing else, this project provides some type of incentive to go and do this in your own communities, in your own areas. The MetroBus bus stops in your areas can completely be a part of the fabric of your communities and really be exciting locations in the community, and as this one does, reflect a little bit about Maplewood or the community in which it's located, whether that's through art or whether that's through design. But I think that there's a real opportunity there. So I do want to thank you all for your time, for joining us for this workshop today, and thank Laura and Sheila for their time. This workshop will be available in the next couple of days on the MPTA website. And then our last workshop of the day will kick off at 3:30, and it is our speed dating round with our vendors. So I think that this is going to be a fun and exciting way to hear from vendors who are helping the Missouri transit providers and other stakeholders in our community meet our mobility needs. So I hope you'll join us at 3:30, and thank you very much, and have a good break in the next half hour.